All right, hey everyone, today I want to take your hand and walk you through this entire process through a fantastic plan to unleash the power of content. Let's go. Organic traffic, meaning people that come to your website simply because they found you in a search on Google or some other search engine. It's like the holy grail of marketing. And yet for years and years and years, people have thought you needed to hire some sort of like SEO wizard to do their juju of whatever they do to be able to get you to rank on Google. That's not really the case. No matter where you're starting from, whether you're someone with a passing interest in earning money from a blog and haven't even started yet, or you're somebody with a large website, a business, an e-commerce business, or something massive, either way or anywhere in between, this action plan that we have come up with is going to work for you. All right, so we're back at the blackboard. This plan has these 7 distinctive steps, and it's important that we walk through this entire plan in the right order, in the right way. That way Google properly recognizes your site, we build it up well, and we're able to drive that organic traffic that we want. The first step is topic selection. Now, if you're coming into this and you already have a website, you say, okay, I've already picked my topic, man, so can I just skip this one? Give me just a second and I'll explain to you why that may not be the case. Oftentimes we end up picking a topic that we may never successfully rank our content for. And so even if the industry that we're in is something we can't change, you've already got a business in this industry or an established website that's doing some good things, you just want organic traffic. What we may need to do is tweak the topic of our website, the topic of the content, to be able to cater to the right kind of people, the right audience that we want. And so what we're going to do is we're going to work on focusing the topic of our website, of the content for our website, so that we can attract the right people. When it comes to picking a right topic, there are only a few important rules of thumb that you need to know to get started. So the number one reason that people tend to fail in blogging is really just because they gave up before they really got anywhere. The number one reason people give up, they're not really that into their topic anyway, and so it feels like too much work. When you don't see an immediate result and you don't like the work, giving up becomes almost inevitable. The number one criterion I use for picking a niche for a website is, do I like the topic? Do I at least have an interest in it? I don't care if you have real expertise or not. That's something we're going to be able to build. The exception to this rule is somebody who's done this several times before and has a passion for the blogging, for building the businesses, etc. Or if you're in a case where you have a big company or an existing company and you're using blogging to support that. In those cases, it's not about interest, it's about putting in the work and getting the result, and that's okay. But if you're building up a blog, whether it's for a niche site, an authority site, or even you want to build an e-commerce site and you want to rely on that organic traffic, pick an industry you have at least some interest in, even if it's something you're not super familiar with or even passionate about yet. There are other criteria that do matter. Is the topic just way too small? Or is the topic way too broad? The cool thing is that if we start and we find out that it's too big or too small, it's easy to start crafting content in the middle and find what's just right. So you don't have to totally nail it down and know exactly what you're going to do in the long run before you get started. It's better to just get started. And then the other important criterion is just the difficulty. There are some niches that are going to be substantially more difficult because they are either very saturated or because it's very, very difficult to build up authority within that industry. Google specifically takes it very seriously when there are topics that they classify as your money or your life. And there are some sort of topics around those that are starting to get classified as that. If someone's doing a search and the information they're given could impact their financial situation or their health situation, Google wants to make sure that what they're providing is accurate information, and they do that through the authoritativeness of the site and of the writer of the content. Building up that authority takes time, and in some cases takes credentials and professional experience. So if you have a topic that you have at least a passing interest in, and it's not so small that no one's ever heard of it, and it's not one of those YMYL, then you're good. If it is YMYL or even close to it, recognize that the time to succeed is going to be longer and it's going to take substantially more effort to get there. But if that's the only thing you're passionate about, it's okay. There are steps in this process that are going to help you overcome that. This is where the rubber really starts to meet the road. Step 2 is validation of the topic as well as search analysis. Search analysis is what most people call keyword research. However, for us, it has a different name because it's a fundamentally different thing. Search analysis, as well as validation, really takes on three important components. The first one is structure, the structure of the website. We want to get this right from the beginning. If you already have content, that's okay. We can come through and we can figure out how to sort of structure that content and do it after the fact. But if you do it from the very beginning, it's going to be much easier. More on that in just a minute. The second piece that we're going to look at is search volume for topics. So for the topic itself, the broad topic of the website, we want to get an idea of just how big is that market. But then for individual search queries that we're going to target with our content, we need to figure out about how many people are actually searching for those things so that we can spend our time focusing on content that's going to drive the most traffic. The third piece of validation is competition. Validating our topic selection as well as validating every single piece of content we're going to put on the site, we need to understand what that competition looks like. Let's dive into those in a little bit more detail. In search analysis, what we're doing is we're looking for topics to write about, specific topics. But these topics aren't just all the things we think about. Back to cycling, it's not just like, what do I want to say about cycling? Let's list out a bunch of topics for articles and write them. Why cycling is the best. Cycling is good for burning calories. These are all things we could write about. No, what we're doing is identifying search queries, things people are actually typing into the search bar on Google, and then we're writing content that actually addresses those searches. There are some great ways to find those searches, numerous tools out there, many of which are free, as well as a lot of different methodologies just using Google directly that are going to help us find those. Let me show you one real quick right here. Let's say I want to write something about cycling, but I don't even know where to get started. So what I'll do is I'll type in a partial search. How many bicycles? And then I can see, first of all, Google is auto-suggesting a bunch of things here. How many bicycles are in the world? How many bicycles are there in the world? These two things are the same search. That might be an interesting topic for an article. It's not necessarily something an avid cyclist is looking for, but it is something people are searching for. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be here. But now if I hit enter, Google isn't sure what I'm asking. How many bicycles? So they start with how many are there in the world? About 1 billion. Somebody has already answered that question to some extent in an article with a bunch of FAQs, right? But what I'm looking for is this. People also ask, how many bikes should you have? That's a great question. And it would be interesting to write an article about how many bicycles you should own depending on the type of cyclist you are. Great topic. Same thing, how many bikes should a cyclist have? How many people in the world have a bicycle? It's pretty interesting. How many bicycles in the US? Here's another cool thing. If I click on one of these, then I could close it if I want to. Look, it opens up additional questions here. I can go down this rabbit hole as far as I want to. I can click on one of these searches and go down that rabbit hole, see what other recommended searches that, that Google finds, etc. And we're going to end up with a great list of search queries that we know have at least some reasonable amount of search volume, or they would be unlikely that Google would list it here. Likewise, at the bottom of the page, this one I don't find to be as helpful, but sometimes I find some really good opportunities here. It's just a list of other things that people search in this same industry or in this same kind of genre of question. That's one of the ways that we find great topics to write about. Think of your question words, who, what, when, where, why, how, etc. And type in partial or even full questions around your topic and see what Google says other people are searching for. It's going to give you a great list, and it's going to help with that first validation that there is search volume. You can then use your intuition to determine, is that search volume likely to be extremely low? Or is this something that a lot of people who are into bicycling are likely to search? We, again, have numerous other methodologies, way too much to talk about in this just one video, to help determine about what that search volume is likely to be. The next one is to look at the competition. So if I were to do how many bicycles are in the world, let's see what comes up. We're going to see that there's a Google snippet here. Somebody's won the snippet and they've answered the question. It's estimated around 1 billion, but nobody knows exactly how many. There's an article here from Rally News that's from 2020. Bike Statistics and Facts from Pioneer. I mean, there's several articles that are directly answering the question. Now this is bicycles produced in the world, so maybe how many are made, but again, it's answering also the question, how many are there in the world? Now we're down to Quora. When we see a forum like Quora showing up in the search results on page 1, that tells us usually, especially for like a fact-based question like this, tells us that there's not a lot of content that's right on point. And so when we start to see those forums, we know that, you know, the forum is kind of a lower quality of content relative to articles like we write. And so usually that means that the competition beyond that is not very high. There's an exception to that rule. There's always an exception. That's why it's important to learn the skills so that you can apply this knowledge and intuition. But the exception would be in the case where somebody's looking for opinions. They want to know what the general consensus tends to be on a topic. In that case, the forum might be the ideal search result, and you may not want to write that blog post unless you can do a survey that aggregates a lot of people's opinions. I could go all day on search analysis, and really that's why we have an entire course on search analysis that we teach. But this is going to give you the baseline. So now here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the topic that we've selected. We're going to pick our sort of area that we want to start. And within it, we are going to break it down into subcategories. So again, let's say we decided we wanted to pick the topic of children bicycling. Well, subcategories for that could be bicycle selection, and for all ages, whatever, but bicycle selection, bicycle safety, and bicycle maintenance. The topics under bicycle maintenance here are going to be different than what a professional cyclist would be searching for or the type of information they would talk about. This is about the basic maintenance needed for a children's bicycle, usually an inexpensive one. Safety, again, is going to be a little bit different. The kind of gear and recommendations you're going to have will be different. And so we're going to pick within that sub-niche a few subcategories. I recommend picking just 3. We're going to go through that process we just talked about of identifying search queries. And we're going to find 10 search queries for each of those 3. And those are going to be the first 30 search queries that we're going to address with content on our website. All right, once we have some good topics that we have confidence, we have not only the potential to rank, but also that are likely to bring in some search volume, now we can get into actually crafting content. We call this section content intro or content introduction simply because everybody needs to start with a certain type of content. The type of content we're going to have you write first is called the response post. This is an article that is written to cater to one specific search query. You may end up ranking for multiple search queries. That's a normal thing. We write content, lots of different things that people search can land on that article. But we target the article after one thing. The whole article is structured following our post recipe to be able to rank very well for that, to thoroughly answer the question, and hopefully even win a Google rich snippet so we can get our content to rank faster. We'll get back to that in a few minutes. So at this stage, we're going to write 30 response posts. We want 10 response posts in each of the 3 subcategories we identified in step 2. That way, each one of those subcategories has a kind of a critical mass of content. If we were to spread out those 30 articles across a whole bunch of different angles, a whole bunch of different aspects of your topic, we don't build up any authoritativeness, really. But by writing content that focuses on a few more kind of narrow verticals, what we're able to do is build up a little bit of authority in each one of those. Now, what we don't want to do is put it all into one, because we may find that that one subcategory ended up having a lot lower search volume than we thought. We want to be able to spread it out a little bit, and because we don't want to pigeonhole our site into just one thing. In this phase, we also want to begin monetizing that initial content. So we're going to post affiliate links, and once we have all 30 of those articles written, we may even be in a good position to start placing some ads on our website, depending a little bit on the type of website that you have. Those 2 forms of monetization are very simple to set up, and they're also the most passive forms of monetization that you can have on blog content. It's what's going to drive those initial dollars, and that's what's going to give you the motivation to continue on through the rest of the steps. The reason that we start with response posts is that response posts are the easiest to rank. Typically, the topics that are covered by response posts are those that are kind of on the long tail. In statistics, in a bell curve, there's the things in the middle. These are the things in search that are searched very frequently. What is the weather today? It's searched a lot, right? And so it's going to be near the middle of the bell curve with a high level of search volume. But there are numerous things that are searched by a much smaller percentage of people. But because there are so many searches, billions per day, Even things that are in those longer tails that are low on the graph are getting a substantial amount of search volume, thousands every single month. And those are what can drive a lot of traffic to your website. Response posts now are blog posts that follow our post recipe, which basically goes like this. We start off the blog post with maybe a sentence or two that just kind of build rapport and sort of state what the main search query is in normal terms. Then we answer that search query the best we can in about 300 characters. This is a very encyclopedic type answer, and we call it an answer target. The goal with that answer target is to win one of those Google snippets, to basically have that 300 character or less segment appear directly in the search result. That allows you to rank your article number 1 and get your listing at the top of the search results in Google. And by the way, that tends to happen much more quickly than getting an article in its entirety to rank number 1 on a brand new website. Then for that search query, we're going to take that topic and we're going to break it down even further into specific segments. For example, if one of the search queries was something like, what sort of helmet should I buy for a 7-year-old? You might then have one section of that article be helmet types available. You might have another one on the cost of different types available. You might have another one on ratings, like safety ratings, if they have those, and what to look for on a helmet for a child. So what we're doing is looking for 3 to 5 kind of subtopics that are all still part of the main search query. They're totally on point for that topic, but that we can go into more detail on to help the reader to have a thorough answer to their question and know exactly maybe what caveats or what things to be looking for to be able to answer their question in its entirety. For each one of those, we're going to write a subheading. That heading is going to be like a headline for an article. If it showed up in a search result, we'd want people to want to click on it because it says exactly what this section of the article is about. And then under each one, we'll write a few paragraphs. And in totality, this article is going to have around 1,000 words in it. That's a response post. That's the post recipe. Then within each article as we write it, we may identify some opportunities to link to products. We're not writing product reviews at this point. We are answering people's questions and writing informational content. However, going back to the example of the bicycle helmet, if there are specific helmets you would recommend, you can link to those products on Amazon and sign up as an Amazon associate. It's very easy to get signed up, and it's free. You just get signed up, and then by linking to the product, you earn yourself a small commission for making that sale. It's the first and fastest way to monetize your website. Then we're going to follow this exact same process 30 total times. We're going to write 10 in each one of those subcategories. By the time you're done with that, you're probably going to be ready to go sign up with Ezoic and get ads placed on your website. This is one of the other ways that you're going to be able to initially monetize your website in a very passive way. Now that you've written 30 blog posts and you've really nailed the post recipe, we can start focusing on more competitive content. We're also going to introduce another post type. That post type is what we call the staple post. It's a staple because it really is kind of the staple, like the meat and potatoes or in baking the flour of the website. It's the thing that makes up the most substance. These articles are going to tend to be a bit longer and more thorough. We're going to introduce original research into the content of our website. We're going to introduce different formats of blog posts, not just the post recipe, but various other formats that we can tailor to the specific search queries that we're targeting. And notice I said queries. At this stage, we're going to craft articles that aren't necessarily just targeting one search query. Even if there's a primary, we're going to make sure that we include other search queries that we can answer very thoroughly and very clearly in our content. That allows each blog post you write to rank for a multitude of search queries. Another thing we're going to introduce at this stage is our interlinking strategy. Interlinking is when you just take in one article, you link to another piece of content on your website, another piece of content that is highly relevant for the reader of the original piece of content. We're going to use the site structure we came up with and those initial subcategories that we use to determine where that interlinking really should take place. And we're also going to start introducing ourselves potentially into more subcategories, broadening the niche that we participate in. Okay, now it's time to start adding staple posts to our website. Staple posts are really valuable because we're able to go into a lot more detail, provide original research. We're able to rank for much more competitive topics. The kind of independent research we do varies depending upon the topic. Sometimes it's a survey. Sometimes it's just reaching out to an expert or even somebody just with more expertise than you in that field. Sometimes it may actually be doing an experiment. In this case, we may even write some product reviews or comparisons where we get our hands on the products, compare them side by side, test them, do all sorts of experimentation on them, and then we have original research on those products and we can actually make a legitimate recommendation. This approach makes our content so much more valuable. Staple posts also have numerous formats. Sometimes it's an article that's written in a list format. Sometimes it's frequently asked questions, an FAQ, or that might be included as part of a blog post. Sometimes it's essentially a response post, but more detailed. Maybe it has 5 to 7 subheadings, or maybe each subheading just has more information in it, making the article a little bit longer. So what we're going to do at this point then is we're going to go back to those 10 articles we wrote in each of those subcategories, and we're going to group those into logical groupings. Probably not all 10, right? So let's say within bicycle safety, you have 10 articles, but really maybe these 3 or 4 are all pretty closely related. We're going to group those into logical groupings. And for each one of those groupings, we want at least one staple post, something that's in more depth and that ties those other posts together. We also then want to link from that staple post out to each of those other existing posts whenever we mention the thing that they're about in more detail. So in the staple post, we don't need to rewrite any of the stuff from those other posts. We may just touch on those subjects in a more superficial way as part of the broader topic, but then we can link out to those blog posts. Likewise, in those blog posts, we can link back to the staple posts and just talk about when we just mention the broader topic of bicycle safety. We also want to link between the different posts that are within that grouping, again, just whenever it makes sense. And so what we end up with is sort of a web, like see the little drawing, like we end up with a little bit of a web of linking back and forth between all of these. It informs the search engine that these are all related topics. It also helps the reader be more likely to read more than one article and ties all the content together. It also increases your authoritativeness within that small subtopic of information. So for each one of these little groupings across those 30 articles, we're now going to have a staple post. It could be a brand new post, or in some cases, it could be that you take one of the response posts you've already written and you beef it up a little bit more and turn it into one of those staple posts. When we're done with that, we have options. We're going to revisit our search analysis, and at that point, we can add more search queries to those 3 different subcategories. We can also pick up additional closely related tangential verticals. We can add more subcategories. I'm going to add usually 1 at a time until I have at least 10 articles in it and that interlinking done. And then I'll add another one and potentially another one. And we may even kind of move up from maybe from children's bicycles up to just everyday bicycle use. We're still not going to go super far afield and get into professional road cycling, but we can branch up and over a bit more and build a more authoritative, larger website a little bit at a time. At this point, we're going to start focusing on authority, building up authoritativeness for you on your website. This is known in Google circles as EAT, or EAT. Expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So at this stage, we're going to go through a whole series of steps to build up EAT on our website. That way you can rank for more and more competitive topics, especially if you're in one of those industries where Google really wants to make sure that the content that they're promoting is actually accurate. EAT is how they determine that. Building some authority on your site really is key to go from bringing in a few thousand people every month to getting large amounts of traffic. That doesn't mean you have to become some sort of popular icon or anything like that, but it is important that you reach a certain level of trust, both with search engines as well as with the people reading your content, so that they will trust the content and you'll rank for more things. It also makes it much easier for the content you write in more competitive topics to be able to rank really well in Google search. We also have an in-depth methodology for how to go about building up that EAT. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to start doing industry outreach. We don't do what's known as link building. Google strongly discourages paying for links or for building links with the express purpose of trying to manipulate the algorithm. which is what link building is. Instead, what we do is we create really valuable content, and we teach ways to create the kind of content that people will naturally want to link to organically without you even asking. We get hundreds of backlinks all the time because of the kind of content we craft. But the other thing that we do is what we call industry outreach. Industry outreach is essentially reaching out to other people in the same industry across all platforms, social media, other bloggers, YouTubers, podcasters, and we participate with them. We collaborate with them. Oftentimes you'll find that people are more likely to serve you, to link to your site, to send people to your site, to mention your site and list you as an authority when you're willing to do that type of thing for them. So as you reach out, find people who are maybe of a similar size or similar place to you, but in your industry. There is amongst bloggers a very strong idea of competition, that if somebody else writes an article on the same topic as mine, we're now competitors and we're adversaries. That doesn't need to be the case. People often click on more than one search result for any given search query. We don't have to be at odds. In fact, we can support one another and overall craft content that does support back and forth. And so by working with other people, getting mentions in their content and mentioning their content on your site, you're going to be able to build those relationships that are going to give you and the people you work with more authority. Okay, so now you've done the work to build up some of that initial authority in your industry. And that's a process that, like content creation, may never completely end. However, it becomes more of a maintenance thing over time rather than a building up thing. And it gets easier and more passive. But now it's time to start diving into advanced monetization. Every single website should have a minimum of 2 forms of monetization. There are so many different ways to monetize a blog. If you are one of those people who's building up an e-commerce business, maybe you already have it, or maybe you have a company that just needs to drive traffic, or a local business. That form of monetization is already built in. And because you have that form of monetization, you may decide that at least on some of the content of your website, you don't actually want ads, because those ads would sort of get in the way of the purchases that people would make on your website. That's okay. However, even as an e-commerce or as a local business, you may still find yourself wanting to participate in affiliate programs because there are products you don't sell directly, or because there are people that you can reach through your website who aren't going to purchase from you locally. So what you may do is become an affiliate for others who provide those goods or services that you can't provide to those customers. And that is a fantastic way to monetize your business to the world at large, rather than just to the people within your reach. For those who start out exclusively as bloggers, people who are building up a niche website or even an authority site, which is kind of just a more authoritative niche site. I actually don't like distinguishing between the two, by the way, because as far as I'm concerned, an authority site is a niche site that had a little more ambition and decided to keep growing. But I digress. For most people, though, with niche sites and with authority sites, I'm definitely going to recommend info products, potentially e-commerce, but at very least info products, as well as affiliate marketing and advertising. There are still other ways to monetize a website, but those are some of the most common, as well as the most passive and the most lucrative. Info products are one of my favorite ways to monetize a website. The number one reason for that is that, one, they can be extremely passive. You create a digital product that when people buy it, they download it. There's no shipping involved, nothing like that. All we're doing is taking information and packaging it up in a very, very helpful way that adds substantial value above and beyond what they would get by reading a bunch of articles across the web. We have a whole methodology for how to create your first info product and how to sell, how to market that info product to be able to reach people very, very well and present a real value proposition. And the other thing I love about these info products is you get to keep all the money from it. You've put in the work, you've created the product, and it's your product. You're not just collecting a small commission off of what you sold for somebody else. You are using your content to advertise your own product and using that to collect that value. And that is one of the ways that we found we can multiply the earnings on a website many, many times over simply by adding our own info product. Okay, so now you've optimized your website to try to earn substantially more income from it. And I really do mean substantially. But now we're at a phase where we're ready for Battleship. Now, if you're familiar with the board game, Battleship is a game where you try to use strategy to outwit your opponent and sink their ships while defending yours. The idea here isn't necessarily to sink other people's ships, but it is to build up the defenses around yours. In the rules of Battleship, you can't move your boats over time, right? However, in the real world, we can. So when we see what's working on our website, as well as what's not working on our website, we can take the boats and we can move them into position where they're going to be more successful. So what do? We go through all of the content on our website in a very methodical process that doesn't actually take that long, and we analyze how it's performing in the rankings and how it's performing from a traffic standpoint. The beautiful thing is at this point, by using Google Analytics, we have tracking data. We know which articles are getting traffic. We can figure out where they're typically ranking. Based upon that information, we can now either craft new content or upgrade the existing content we have to ensure that all of the content on our website is working for us. And once you do that once or twice, you now just have this amazing content where every single piece is supporting the site, they're all supporting each other, and they're all driving traffic. It's a beautiful way to continue to grow the site upward and onward, but it's also a great way to be able to just almost passively run a site and just check in on it about every 6 months or so and continue to rake in all of that traffic and use that traffic to monetize or to drive people toward whatever message it is that you want to send to them. This is a beautiful phase for a website to be in because it's where we have the opportunity to allow it to be almost totally passive, where we essentially just check in on it, battleship it, run through that methodology, and then let it go for another 6 months. Or we can go back to earlier phases and we can apply those same principles again, but broadening the topic of the website to tackle additional tangential categories, building the site to be more and more and more authoritative, as well as potentially introducing additional media platforms. When it comes to building a successful website and driving organic traffic in large volumes, again, never paying for another ad again if you don't want to, there really are a few things that have to come into play together. It's not just a matter of learning enough SEO tactics and tricks. It's not just a matter of writing enough blog posts, but there really is a combination of a few different things. The first one really is skills. We have to develop the right skills. That's why in Project 24 we have so much course material so that you can learn those skills step by step by step. You don't need to know everything in the beginning just to start a website and write a response post, but there are some things you really do need to know so you don't waste your time writing on topics that are never going to work. The next thing that we need is a process. Without a process, you're just taking all the tips and tricks that you learn from YouTubers like me, and you're trying to apply them all, and you're not necessarily knowing what to do, when, and where. That's why in Project 24, we've outlined the entire blogging system, the entire blogging process, our whole action plan in a series of methodical lessons that walk you through the process of building your website, as well as additional course material, again, to give you the skills that you need at every step of the way so that you have the process, so that you know the types of posts to write in the beginning, exactly how to craft them to get them recognized by Google early on, and at what point it's worth it to start doing industry outreach. All of these things matter and should be done sequentially. The third piece is time, and it does take time. Not just time to write the content, but time to allow the content to perform. Google and other search engines don't just immediately start ranking brand new content on brand new sites. There's a certain level of trust that they need to develop with you first. And to develop that trust, they need a critical mass of content, enough content. That's why I have you write 30 posts quickly and get them up on your site. 30 posts in just 3 subcategories. And then it's a waiting game. Now, we don't just wait, we don't just sit there and hope that those 30 posts do well. Because we've seen this so many times, we know what it's going to take. We know that we can continue to move forward. That's why in Project 24, we set a pretty realistic timeline based upon averages we've seen across thousands and thousands of people's websites. So we know what it's going to take. We help you to see what it's going to take so that you can confidently move forward at every step, even when you're sitting in that lull period. We call it the ghost town phase, because you're writing your content, it looks like, to a ghost town. Nobody's there yet. I have seen many, hundreds of bloggers who have given up at that phase. They've written a bunch of content on their website and then they say, I'm done. Do you guys want to buy my website for like $1,000 because it's not going anywhere? Or I'm just going to delete the website. And everybody in Project 24 in the community is like, no, 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 don't delete it. I'll buy it from you. I'll buy it from you, because we know it works. So just having that knowledge and having that support from our active community of members is a great way to stay motivated during that ghost town phase of your website. Put all of those three things together and you have the recipe for success in internet marketing. Without really any one of those elements, you could find yourself floundering for years or giving up before you've ever given yourself a chance. This entire process, obviously there's a lot more to the nitty-gritty and how to do each thing than I could cover in a single video. I've struggled to make this video not be like a day long, and so I want to give you the rest of that. And that's why I created, with the help of an awesome team, Project 24. Project 24 is named that because it refers to the goal that many of our members have of being able to replace their full-time income within 24 months. And we've seen it happen over and over and over again. Your individual goal may be different. It may be to drive more traffic to the website you already have. That's great. And it may be to just have a side income. It may be to replace a full-time income even faster, or to replace it, but eventually. We've seen the whole spectrum, and people can adapt it to their own needs. But the thing is when you try to do this on your own, there are too many pitfalls. There are too many places where you can just get it wrong. That's why I created this system. The Project 24 system is designed so that you'll know exactly what to do every step of the way. We have lesson after lesson after lesson. We talked about niche selection. It's not just one lesson about niche selection. There's this whole course about selecting a niche for your website. This is also something that's really, really, really hard to do if you're doing it alone. Very few people around you in your real life are going to understand why you're doing what you're doing, especially again if you're just taking a blogging approach to building a business. That doesn't seem like a real job, and that's not normal. It's a different paradigm. And so you need a community of people that you can talk to, that are going to support you, that know what you're going through, and that are there whenever you run into questions because there's something new that you've never seen before. That's why we have this awesome community. This community is amazing. It takes a little bit of a forum style, but it feels more like a social network, a social community. You can message other members directly, but also we have these categories for general substantive discussion, YouTube discussion, blogging discussion. We have categories for women in Project 24. We have categories for just social discussion and chit chat. We have different accountability groups that people set up to be able to hold one another accountable and support one another within a niche. We have some niche specific groups so that you can find other bloggers and YouTubers in your own industry, so you can find people to collaborate with who understand what it is you're doing and are creating content of a similar quality and in a similar manner to how you are. We also support you by providing a podcast for bloggers and another for YouTubers that goes out 3 times a month each. And so no matter which track you're on, or if you're doing both, you're gonna have fresh content with the latest and greatest information from me on blogging and the rest of our team, and from Nate from Channel Makers if you're into YouTube. And there's no reason you should ever really need to get stuck, because we also have masterminds every single week. There are multiple. In fact, today is the day I'm filming this video, December 15th. There were 2 today. And these are groups that you can participate in. It's totally free and part of Project 24, where you can show up, ask your questions. Some of these are for regional, some of these are for YouTube or blogging. Others are based upon specific questions, certain phases of the system, content creation. We've had some on time management and various other topics, as well as numerous Q&A sessions that all of us here at Project 24 are participating in to make sure that you have the answers to your questions and never get stuck. So now you have really 2 options. The first is to use a tried and true and proven system that we've developed and utilized over several years now and helped thousands of people. A lot of them are earning a substantial income for their families. Many of them have gone full-time and been able to quit their jobs, starting this up as a little side gig that's giving themselves and their families financial freedom and flexibility beyond what they ever dreamed possible from a blog. The other approach is you can do it yourself. You can continue to watch videos like this one and try from those videos to piece together your own process, your own system, your own action plan. You can do that, But trust me, I have worked with numerous members who have come to me and said, I've tried other courses, I've tried the doing it myself route, I've done this for years. And then I joined Project 24 and everything changed. I had a system, I had a process, I had all the skills laid out before me, and I knew exactly what to do at every moment of the process. And now, 6 months, a year later, I'm suddenly finding success that I couldn't achieve in the previous 10 years. I'm using those numbers because those are specific numbers that were given to me by a member of Project 24 who told me that exact story. I hear often from people who tell me, I'd love to do this. I really appreciate the content that you put out on Income School. I'm working on my blog. I can't justify starting Project 24 because my spouse doesn't get it, doesn't want me to spend the money, or I don't have the money, or whatever it is. So as soon as my blog is making enough, I'm gonna join because I know it's valuable. Whenever I hear that, my heart kind of sinks, because what that tells me is that the hardest part of blogging, that ghost town phase where you're not getting any feedback from an audience, you're going through that alone. I don't want you to go through it alone. I don't want you to put yourself in any sort of financial trouble to sign up and to pay me. It's not what this is about. I've tried to price this at exactly where it should be to help make it justified, to support the team that we have here, but also to make sure that you have access to the resources you need to be successful with what you're doing. Really, if I can just get you to success 1 month faster, this will have more than paid for itself for several years, if we're honest. But really what we find is that more often than not, we get people there years faster than they were going on their own. I want to see you succeed. That's why Project 24 exists. If I wanted to make as much money as possible, I'd be charging $1,000 for this like everybody else is. But instead what I've done is I've taken everything I've learned. I have a team of people here with me who everything they have learned, we have all put everything into Project 24. And every time we learn something new, it's in Project 24. We have a whole YouTube system that's this, but about YouTube. You want to learn how to do video? It's there in Project 24. And we have an amazing community of members, all people who are in the same boat as you. Some who are just further along their path, and others who are going to be going through it right there with you. And down the road, others who will be behind you that you can pull forward as well. And that community, many members say, is worth the cost of admission just for that. We've tried to keep the pricing as affordable as possible because we want you to have every opportunity you can. I hope to see you inside of Project 24. Go to incomeschool.com/go to learn more about Project 24. I'll give you a whole tour of everything that's inside. You can see it before you buy it, and I hope to see you there soon.